Academy of European Swordsmanship. I'm one of the instructors here. Today we're going to discuss how to develop the lunge for our purposes in HEMA. So when we think lunging, we think very long strides where we reach out, move forward to strike someone. The lunge we use in HEMA is a very posterior chain dominant lunge. This means your hamstrings and your glutes are the prime movers for it. What you'll typically see in a gym environment is a shorter lunge where people are just coming down and up, and that'll be more quad dominant. So what we want to do as far as our development in the strength side of lunging is work on that posterior chain. So we want to go with a bit longer of a lunge when we're simply building the strength up in it, as that will shift everything back onto the posterior side of the body. The other major thing we need to be aware of in lunging is the mobility demands. If you're someone who struggles to get into those deep lunges, then you can use other things other than practicing lunge itself, like a Cossack squat. A Cossack squat is with your feet flared out. So you're going to shift back, down, low as you can go, and then again the other side, trying to keep your body upright. This will help open up the hips and develop those hips so that you can actually go into that full extension of the lunge. Now, the second part about the lunging that we tend to forget is the lunge just isn't the lunge forward. You have to be able to come back from it, and that's where you need to work on your ability to push back out of the position. So coming from here, being able to drive back out of it is something that's very important. That can be done with a weighted lunge. I would keep that in a lower volume if you're going weighted though, because it's very hard on the knees. You're repeating that, especially with extra load, and we do lots already in our fighting. Now, how deep you need to go in your lunge will depend on what your weapon is and the context you're fighting under. If you're fighting with a long sword, you're not going to lunge as deep as if you're fighting with a small sword or a rapier. So, long sword fighters, typically, that's a fairly long lunge for what you need. You might see a small sword or a rapier guy, he's going to go down further. So you need to match what you're training to what your specific needs are. It's also very important to be comfortable in the bottom position. So again, if you're doing a long lunge, being able to hold this position, you have a 4 or 5 count, come back, again, hold, and come back. That will help you when you reach there, preventing yourself from going too far or being uncomfortable in position, which is when we tend to do things like pull on groins and hamstrings, which we want to avoid for the sake of our long-term training in both HEMA and our own general health. Okay, so some examples of how we lunge with the longsword. I'm in my longsword ready stance. Doesn't matter which variation we use. When we lunge forward, we want to be in a short enough stance that we can very quickly recover and be able to move again. So I'll show that again. So it's want to be able to quickly recover back and be able to advance or step right out and keep moving. The reason for this is that the longsword has superior leverage than the single-handers, so you're more likely to have an opponent close in on you and start moving into that context fight. Now, with a one-handed sword, like a side sword like this one, when I lunge, you'll note the difference in the stances. When I lunge here, I can lunge with my foot already extended forward, which is going to be a shorter lunge, or I can gather up and lunge out from there. Both of these end up in the same end position. The difference is in how quickly I can advance and throw the lunge forward. So note with the side sword, I'm able to go into these longer, deeper lunges as the weapon allows me to turn my body to do so. There's a slight rotation, moving my hips to open them versus the long sword where I'm going to stay square and the hips are going to stay closed. This will let me go deeper and recover quicker for the depth I'm going. So again, you can recover back very easily and use your footwork to get out of it. It's very important when we lunge that we learn not to get into too far to come back from it. If I go too deep into a lunge, it takes too much effort to come back. I've left myself vulnerable. That's why we work on both mobility and strength, is so that when we get in those positions, we can come back from them easier and quicker, and are more used to the stimulus of being in there. So lunging, in terms of developing for martial arts, is going to take lots of repetitions, you're going to take mobility training, and you're going to have to get stronger. And just doing lunges in class is most likely not going to be enough for getting stronger.